You're welcome back to the Eastern Business Report. I am Cherry Ojukwu. When we talk about regional development and conversion, often defaults to infrastructure, policy, and foreign investment, we rarely discuss the actual engine of commerce, the ability to close a deal. Today, we are focusing on salesmanship as a tool for regional development. We're exploring how the mastery of selling goes beyond individual profit to scale local businesses, drive regional revenue, and stabilize our economic landscape. Joining me to break this down is George Emetuche, MD and CEO of Selling Champion Consulting Limited. Mr. Emetuche, welcome to the program.
Greetings, Southeast, greetings, Nigeria, greetings, the world. My name is George Emetuche. I'm popularly known as the Selling Champion. It's always awesome to be here. Afia TV, you're doing a great job.
Thank you very much, sir. So the East is historically known for its strong trading culture, but there is a clear distinction between everyday trading and professional salesmanship. So from your vantage point, how does transitioning from basic trading to structured salesmanship directly impact the economic development of this region?
Okay, awesome. Before we delve into selling, the art of selling, or salesmanship as a tool for regional development, it's good we go back to marketing, which is the mother of selling. In talking about marketing, marketing is about identifying needs and creating value. Identifying needs, creating value, right? Communicating value and delivering value for your target audience in order to achieve your objective. So your objective can be profit, it can be non-profit. Okay, so having said that, you now talk about salesmanship, which is an art. Selling is a branch of marketing, now, which is an act. So you need to first of all identify your strength area. So as the region now, what is the strength areas of the region? So if you talk about Enugu, you talk about the human capital, people element, which are is very important because human capital is very important in this conversation. Then you talk about what comes from the region. You talk about our coal in Enugu. If you say Enugu, you say coal city. China, I don't know how viable it is now. I don't know what we are doing to revive that area, that natural resources. China, coal drives 60% of electricity generation in China, and to a very large extent, their production. If you go to India, the story is the same. If you go to Indonesia, the story is the same. If you go to South Africa, the story is the same. They are doing a lot with coal as a product. Now, even the US uses coal. They've not phased it out. They even export coal. So that is for Southeast. Now, agro is a product. So we have, fertile land in the Southeast. What are we doing with it? In addition, the head of ADB said, food, agriculture is the new oil. Now, what are we doing in the region, to trying to see how we will produce food, not just for consumption, but for exporting and making money, Now, we talk about tech. The world is talking about tech today. AI has come to stay. I see a lot of stuff is going around Imo State, developing tech. I see a lot of stuff coming from Anambra on tech. So, and the other states, I see the Enugu there, the tech school or something. So that is where we are. Then you go to Ebonyi. Ebonyi is agriculture, the people. You go to Abia, you see Aba, commercial hub, hub, and the governor is doing a lot of stuff there. You go to Anambra, you go to Onitsha, commercial headquarters of Africa, if you will. So you first of all, you need to identify your strength. Now, if you identify your strength, what you have to go to market with, what you are going to sell, it becomes a product. It becomes your services. Now, before you now say, okay, who am I going to sell these things to? What do they need? What do they need? Now you have this. What do they need? That is where the need identification comes in. Now, how do I now communicate this need? How do I communicate it to the people? Not just about I have coal, I have commerce, I have expertise in trade, I have this, I have that. How do you communicate it? Now, how do you deliver it to your target audience? To your target audience, who is even your audience? How do you get to your audience? Before now, we have something we call as we know, the Igbo boy or the Igbo apprenticeship system.
Yes.
That is a beginning. It's not an end in itself. It's a beginning to an end.
Yes.
So how do you move the Igbo apprenticeship system from where it was to where it should be in today's context and where it should go? So knowledge comes in, awareness comes in, capability building comes in. So how do you take it to the world? So salesmanship, that is why salesmanship is important. Salesmanship is an act that connects all these things. It's the act that will connect the man behind the sales, the human being behind the sales, the organization behind the sales, whether it's government, whether it's a business organization, whether it's individual. It's, the selling I promote is not just the transactional selling. It's not what we're talking about in today's world. Where the sales or the salesmanship or the act of selling we are promoting today is value creation. So you need to identify where they need value. You need to identify how you are going to create that value within the context of what the customer or your prospect want. So our people should begin to talk about how do we communicate this value, even within our states, within the region. How do we take what we have to sell it or to communicate it, the value we've created to other states? Then how do we now export what we have beyond the shores of Nigeria? I think that should be the conversation. Then we need, of course, the government to provide the enabling environment because you need to be sure all this conversation. How is energy playing? You need to be sure how is your road, how is the road network, how is transportation, how is capability building, the human capital development, all those. So it's going to be a collaboration between a government, non-governmental organization, business organization. Everybody will come together and see how we package all this. It becomes a product and service that we will communicate, we will deliver to the world around us in order to make the region sellable and profitable.
Thank you very much, sir. So many indigenous businesses hit a revenue ceiling because the founder is the only effective closer in the room. How critical is building a standardized sales system rather than relying on individual talent for scaling enterprises in the East?
When I talk about sales, I train. I am into sales and marketing consulting space. So part of what we do, we recruit, we train, teams, sales teams, marketing teams, and all those stuff. If I talk about sales, I look at there are very important areas, factors you need to look at. You look at the people element. People elements, has to do with the team, your team, people, the human beings that will create the strategy, the model, the product, the services, and so on. So if you look at the people element, you look at the strategy, Okay, because the people element will not just work on nothing. They are going to work looking at the strategies. So you look at the model. Model is how you're going to achieve what you want. All the processes you go to that will take you to the market. That's the model. Then, of course, you look at your product. You look at your services. You look at your industry. You look at, of course, your industry talks about competition and so on and so forth. So you need to build a system. The answer to your question is building a system, building a sales structure where you don't rely on, it's like when the boss travels, the business travels with the boss. That is not a system. Is there to function, whether the founder, whether the manager or supervisor or the sales lead, whether he's there or not. So there is a system. Everybody knows what to do all the time because there is a template, there is a system that is in place that tells you how to acquire customers. There's a system in place that will tell you how to retain customers. There's a system in place that will tell you how to expand customers. There's a system that will tell you on research and development how we are going to create this product. There's a system that tells you about customer intelligence, customer insight. There's a system that will tell you what competition is saying and how you are going to get in and be ahead of competition. So it's about building a system. Now it comes again to where I started. I said it's not about my people will say now about go boy. You've gone through the apprenticeship system, and somebody will say, "What are you going to teach me?" I did I passed through the apprenticeship system for 7 years. I know everything. I'm reaching from Ikeja, Lagos, and where I stay, Computer Village is just about 5-10 minutes drive from where I am now. And I have a client. The person is a good example of what I'm trying to to use it to drive home my point. I have a client we have a client that he passed through the Igbo apprenticeship system, right, which is a very good one. But they are into IT accessory. Okay, they are into the tech space, providing accessories and all those stuff. Now, this particular founder of that business will always, apart from doing the apprenticeship system, the Igbo boy thing that is our strength. But this person will always renew, reinvigorate. This person will always revive, rejig, try to get new information by way of training and retraining in order to fit in into today's competitive environment. So it's not about I've done it. So if as the founder of the business, because he's very much aware of what is happening today, by way of being in the now in capability building, he's going to know what to do. He's going to know how to drive the business. So our people in the South should embrace learning and continuous learning and personal development. It's important. It's not begin to see those as investment, not expenses. So if you see them as investment, you will know, you have relevant information to know what to do at any point in time. The world is moving. How do you take your business to the e-commerce platform? So if you're selling spare parts in Mbuka Newi or Mbuka Onitsha, you're selling clothing in main market in Enugu, you're selling clothes in Aba market, you're selling food stuff in Ogumabiri market in Owerri. And how do you put those stuff? People want to buy, people are buying convenience now. So the market, in the course of time, that's where the market is driving. People will, people want to buy convenient. They want to stay in their home, in their houses, to use their phone to buy. That is why the brands like Konga is doing all this e-commerce platform. They are doing well and taking that space, because that is where the world is going. So as a business person in the South is, how are you positioning yourself to play strongly in today's ever-changing business environment. The customer, the buyer is more aware. The competition is stiff. You can't continue to do it the way you've been doing it. You need information. You need knowledge. You need to learn research. Even if it's survey, go to ask questions. You have your phone. Go, use your phone to get relevant information. Get mentors. Get mentors. Interact with people that have knowledge, and you add it to what you know. What you know is relevant already. Add it to what you know, and you see that you become better. So that is my take on that.
Thank you very much, sir. Okay, so when discussing, when discussions around regional development happen, the focus is mostly exclusively on tech, agriculture, or infrastructure. Human capital in the form of professional selling is rarely on the agenda. What is the economic cost of that oversight?
I will still come back to region. Recently, when you look at knowledge, they say that knowledge is power. Okay, knowledge is power, and what you know, I encourage not just employers now. I encourage professionals. I encourage employees to invest in themselves, because you are what you know. You cannot do beyond the level of what you know. Your capability, your skill set determines your capacity, what you can do. That is the truth. Now, the employers in the Southeast, in the region, should invest in the human capital. Invest in human capital, develop them. So in your team, because your team cannot perform beyond what they know. So if you want them to invest in them to get more from them. Now, you as a professional, invest in yourself. Even when your organization is not coming for, invest in yourself. So that human capital development is an issue. I've as a consultant, I've been around the Saudis. I've done some stuff there. When I give you an example, I'm the convener of Nigeria Sales Conference. When we brought Nigeria Sales Conference in Enugu in 2019, we've held this several times in Lagos, and we say, okay, let us get it to Enugu. I grew up in Enugu. I schooled at the University of Nigeria Unite, so I'm passionate about Enugu. So we brought it to Enugu. Now, it was a challenge. If we virtually sponsored the event 100%, our friends in Lagos supported us, which is, our clients in Lagos, but not really in Enugu or in the region. So it's an issue. So the business community in the region should invest in conferences, invest in summits, invest in training, invest in seminars that will equip the people in the region. It's very important. Now, even the government can also do this. I see some brands doing it, but I think we can do more, because it's a game changer. If you cannot discount knowledge, in anything you are doing. You start with what do you know. So from what do you know, then you get to what do you want to achieve. So it's very important. So our people should change their perception. You in the media, even our people, even investing in the media, so to promote their product, this is a challenge. So they believe somehow they will fix it. They know what to do. So investing in our people to learn, for them to know more is a challenge. Investing in consulting, consultancy services is a challenge, because the owner or the founder of business believes that he knows everything. Especially, I know that some people. I'm not generalizing it, but majority of the people in that space, that is a mindset thing. So we need to begin to think differently in that sector, so that we get our people, so that our people can compete favorably anywhere they are.
Very well.
Thank you.
Yes. In this region, the market is highly sensitive to price. How do businesses successfully pivot from constantly competing on cost to actually selling on value?
All right. How do you define value? First of all, that conversation is I teach. I teach. There's a concept I teach: value-based selling. Value is you don't. First of all, you don't compete on price. If you compete on price, you box yourself. For how do you? So if your competitor, you sell at 10,000 per unit, your competitor is selling at 9,000. You go to 9,000. The competitor goes to 8. You go to 7. Before you know it, you price yourself out of the market. Now, I believe that pricing is positioning. Pricing is positioning. Value has to do with understanding before you deliver value. If you look at my definition of marketing, I talked about identifying needs first. So you need to identify the needs of your target market, then create value that will create your offering that will provide solution to those needs. So if you do that, then you now begin, if you hear me, I say identifying needs, okay, creating, communicating, and delivering to that market, to satisfy that market in order to achieve your objective. So you see the sequence. So if you understand that sequence, there is people who will not talk about price because you are giving them value. You've identified their need. You are giving them solution. People talk about price when they feel shortchanged, when they feel that you didn't give them enough value to justify your price. So people, when coming to buy, people are looking at energy cost. So the energy, the strength is going to take them to buy. They are looking at monetary cost, the money they are going to spend to buy. So they are looking at intellectual costs. They will think before the product. They are looking at all these costs. They put it together and they look at the value you're offering. So if all this cost is maybe 50% and you're offering them value that is 60%, they will buy because you are offering your value is more than what they are going to spend. So if this value total cost is 50%, what you are giving them is 40%. They're going to complain about the price. So you need to measure anytime you're facing your price, anytime you're talking about the price, you need to first of all identify your market. Identify your market. Are you selling mass product? Are you selling premium product? All right. Which product should I go to with this in this market, and what am I going to sell? So it's a function of segmenting, what we call segmenting, targeting, and positioning. So you need to segment the market to know what product will answer to a particular market. So if you take a wrong product in a right market, it will fail. If you take a right product in a wrong market, it's going to fail. So you need to understand. So value, I don't, what in our brand, we sell premium product. And no apologies. Is premium product comes with premium price. And that is what it is. So we will promise you that we'll deliver premium product and it comes with premium price. So you need to decide which market do you want to play in. Do you want to play in mass market? Do you want to play in premium market? It's your decision and it's your right. So cost shouldn't be an issue. First of all, look at the market, identify your customers, discover your customers, and look at what you're going to provide to them as a way of offering and a solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Emetuche. Thank you very much for your insight today, and many thanks for staying with us. Remember that regional growth is not just happening. It's something that you actively build and you actively sell. And that's the much we can take on the Eastern Business Report. This is the Afia Business Morning, and it will return tomorrow. My name is Cherry Ojukwu. Thanks for staying with us.